Joseph King, the Landscape King podcast. Here we go again. If you don't know who we are, we're a landscape company in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We started in 2017, and now we've started this podcast to educate people about landscaping. Mostly we've been talking about plants. From time to time we've talked about business. We'll continue to talk about business as well. But today we're talking about the top 10 bedding plants for full sun in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So what are bedding plants? Oftentimes bedding plants are just referred to the plants that you're putting in the flower bed that are going to bloom flowers. And so we have annuals and perennials. Most of the plants we're talking about today are going to be annuals, but just bedding plants. And often when you go into a nursery, they have the house full of all the bedding plants, or the bedding plant house is normally what they'll call it as well. But bedding plants. So let's get to number one. Number one, we have Diplodinias. So Diplodinias are a tropical. Here in Baton Rouge, they do die in the wintertime. Sometimes they'll come back, but not often. And this would be like in the front of a flower bed where you have, or by a HOA sign, or by like the front of an entrance or the front of a restaurant or something. And they come in a lot of different colors. So the Diplodinia comes in red, comes in pink, comes in white, and it's going to bloom spring through fall, just about all season. And they're beautiful. And so what that gives you is that just pop of color, and it works out really well. So Diplodinia is more of a shrub. There's also a mandevilla, which is more of a vine. But pink, red, white, Diplodinia. Number two, Cleome. The Cleome that I like a lot is the Senorita Rosalita. Now this Cleome is a LSU super plant. It does get a little bit bigger. I've seen it get like 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide. I've also noticed that they dry out really quickly. So you want to make sure you keep them watered well with some micro irrigation or however you have that set up, and just make sure we keep them watered. But there's a pink, there's a white, and this again, just like the Diplodinia, works well for an entrance, but on the back side of your rows of your bedding plants. So you have something short, something a little bit taller, and then you would have the Cleome. And I use it sometimes just as a filler plant too, or an accent plant in a landscape, knowing that it's going to have to get replaced after the winter. Number three, Coleus. So Coleus is normally a shade-loving plant, but there are some varieties that do really well in the sun. And they come in all different colors, all different heights as well. Some are going to get much larger, some say a little bit smaller. But another great bedding plant for you if you're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Number four are marigolds. So one cool fact about marigolds that you always hear is that they can be used to deter insects in vegetable gardens. And so sometimes something with the maybe the fragrance of the flower actually can help keep insects away in a vegetable garden. Does it work really well? I don't know, but I see a lot of home farmers who will put marigolds around their vegetable garden plots, and it seems to be a common trend. But they look really good in a landscape as well, and so they give you a nice pop of yellow, a nice pop of orange, and they bloom almost all season as well, and they can handle that full sun really well. Number 5, I can't talk about plants without talking about Lantana. This is one of my favorites just because it's so easy. You just put it in the ground. It's fairly drought tolerant. It does amazing in full sun, and it just blooms spring through fall. And the one I like the most is kind of the classic, the new gold. It just blooms crazy. It spreads crazy. This one normally comes back, but it does really well in the Baton Rouge landscape. Now, there are some other varieties like bandana lantana that don't spread as wild. They stay more compact. There's some that get even larger that have orange flowers, that have pink flowers. There's one that has purple. But I just like the classic yellow. It looks really good in a landscape. I've got some in my backyard, and in the winter they just die back, but they almost always come back. Lantana. Number 6 are Pentas. So Pentas and Lantana both attract butterflies as well. Pentas come in a lot of different colors. They're going to be a warm season annual. They're going to die in the winter. They're normally not going to come back. But there's pink, there's red, there's white. It just gives you a nice pop of color, especially in the front of your flower bed. or if you like in the front entrance of a neighborhood or a restaurant, you would see these used a lot. Plant in a big mass. With all of these, we like to plant them in large masses so they really give you a nice pop. Next, number 7, we have purslane and portulaca. So these are 2 different plants, but I grouped them together. They're just low growing. They kind of look like a succulent. Maybe portulaca is, but they both are low growing. They look really cool in a rock garden as well, but they both do really well in the full sun, and they both do well as far as flowering. They put out a lot of flowers as well. There's white, there's yellow, there's a pink, and they look awesome. Number 8, this is another one that I love, is salvia. So there are some perennial salvias and there's annual salvias as well. They do really well in the full sun. This is going to get larger, just like the cleome. Some of them are going to get as big as the cleome, maybe that 3 feet, 3 or 4 feet. Some of them are only going to stay, 1 to 2, 3 feet tall as well. But they range depending on the variety that you get. But they just look awesome. The perennial is nice because it always comes back as well. Number 9, which is a really common warm season annual that you're going to see, is the vinca. The vinca comes in white, pink, red, almost any color, just not yellow, but very common. This is going to be in the front of your bedding plant area in your flower bed. So traditionally what you would see is something like vinca, or really you could do purslane, which is only going to get a few inches tall, then vinca, then you would have your next row, which could be coleus, and you could have, so a lot of people would just do 3 rows, but you could even have 5 rows depending on how much space you have. And then behind that, maybe the Diplodinia. And you can kind of alternate these with whatever color scheme you're going with. If you're trying to do a lot of yellows and orange and white, or you're trying to do more pinks, purple, you're trying to make them all complement each other instead of conflicting with each other. And it gets really fun. And this is kind of the artful side of landscaping, of being able to put colors together that evoke a certain feeling and make especially at a restaurant. And in Baton Rouge, the restaurant that does this the best is McDonald's. They always have a really inviting display of different colors, different textures, different feels. They use a lot of these plants, and it always looks good. So good job. So number 10, sweet potato vine. Some people love this. Some people hate it. I like it because it's easy. You plant it. You don't have to worry about it. Now it can take over. There's one that's like a chartreuse green that's almost that yellowish that just pops really nice. These are great in hanging baskets as well. And all of these can be used in pots, and you can make a really nice display. But this is one that's going to cascade out of a pot or a hanging basket, or it's just going to spread. This is another one that you could put at the front of the bed. You could do that yellowish green, the chartreuse, in the front of the bed, and then you could have maybe some marigolds in there as well, and then have the Diplodinia in the back, or the cleome. Just giving you different heights, different colors, different textures. But sweet potato vine, it does make a sweet potato as well. I don't know if it's ornamental, but I don't know if it's edible. It's grown to be ornamental, but I've seen them come out, and I've seen this one as well come back. Most of the time it's going to not come back, but sometimes it will come back as well. So these are the top 10 bedding plants for your Baton Rouge landscape. And like I said, I like utilizing all of these. And there's a whole lot more plants you can go with. These are just the common ones that I see that are used a lot. And these are the ones we use. And these are the easier ones that we find we don't have a lot of problems. Now you want to make sure you're watering all of these as well. Your bedding plants do require a different amount of water than your other ornamental shrubs and your grass as well. So we want to make sure we're giving them adequate water, fertilizing them, giving them the nutrients they need, making sure they're ready to succeed, and that your landscape looks awesome. So if you got questions about what you can do in your yard, just ask us. If you have questions about what you want us to talk about on this podcast, just ask us. Somebody on YouTube made a comment about, hey, talk more about native plants. So very soon we are going to have a guest come on and talk to us about some native plants and why they're important and how we can use them in the landscape. And this week, plant of the week, hydrangeas. So hydrangeas come in many different colors. There's different flower shapes as well. One of my favorites is the limelight. It's the white. It's that cone shaped almost. And then there are like endless summers. There's many different varieties that make different blues, pinks. And then some of them you can change the color based on the acidity of the soil. But the hydrangea, and they're starting to bloom right now, and they're looking awesome. Now, most of them are going to do best in the shade, but that limelight is going to do okay. It actually does pretty good in the sun as well. Not 10 hours of sun, but maybe 4 to 6, maybe 6 to 8. It does pretty good in the full sun as well. So, hydrangeas, plant of the week. Got questions, ask us. And remember, the Landscape King podcast, let's plant some plants.